Gyeongju, a city that holds 1,000 years of history. The cherished values preserved over time have shaped who we are today. Now, through new encounters, we step into a better future. Sustainability, innovation. With the spirit of connection, a new millennium story begins. As APEC and Gyeongju come together, APEC meets Gyeongju.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong, in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
The leaders of the U.S. and China are paying state visits to South Korea on the occasion of the APEC leaders meeting next week. President Lee Jae-myung will hold a summit with his American counterpart on the 29th and with his Chinese counterpart on November 1st. Also next week, U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping will meet in Gyeongju, with all eyes on whether their first in-person meeting since Trump's return will ease the two sides' thorny trade ties. And South Korean officials say Seoul and Washington still have sticking points in their trade negotiations over the amount of Seoul's $350 billion direct investment. We begin at the presidential office. President Lee Jae-myung is gearing up for a busy week, first attending the ASEAN summit in Malaysia and then hosting the APEC economic leaders meeting in South Korea. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yu-jin starts us off.
The upcoming week will be a super week of multilateral diplomacy for South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. That's according to his National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak on Friday. As expected, President Lee will first travel to Malaysia on Sunday to attend the ASEAN summit.
President Lee's first ASEAN summit will serve as an opportunity to elevate the annual $200 billion trade and over 12 million people-to-people exchange between Korea and ASEAN. His trip will also strengthen cooperation in sectors like AI and enhance joint responses to regional challenges such as online scam crimes.
On his first evening there, the president will have dinner with members of the Korean community. Monday will start with a bilateral summit with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet. The two will discuss joint efforts to combat online scam crimes, an issue that has been making headlines in South Korea for weeks. President Lee will then attend the South Korea ASEAN and ASEAN Plus 3 summits, which include Japan and China, before holding talks with Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar bin Ibrahim ahead of his return flight in the afternoon. Waiting for him is the APEC economic leaders meeting in Gyeongju. It's another high-profile stage on which the president will host back-to-back summits and chair the 21-member forum on trade, artificial intelligence, and demographic challenges.
Through summits with the United States, China and Japan, we'll complete the fastest ever round of reciprocal visits with Washington, restore relations with Beijing through the first Chinese state visit in 11 years, and sustain positive momentum with Tokyo by meeting Japan's new Prime Minister early in her term.
The biggest spotlight will be on his second in-person meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday, as Seoul and Washington have yet to finalize a trade deal. Also in focus is Yi's first summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Saturday after the two-day APEC leaders meeting ends. Working-level talks are underway to schedule a one-on-one with new Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Two major multilateral stages in a single week: the ASEAN Summit in Malaysia and the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting in Gyeongju. It remains to be seen how President Yi will leverage this Super Week to deepen diplomatic ties and help shape global discussions on shared challenges. 송유진, Arirang News.
And Prime Minister Kim Min-seok has now conducted a final on-site inspection in Gyeongju, with the APEC leaders meeting less than a week ahead. During his two-day visit from Thursday to Friday, Kim met with host economy liaison officers who will be assisting the visiting leaders and delegations, and expressed his appreciation for their efforts. The inspection reviewed infrastructure and logistical preparations, including accommodation and venues such as the International Media Center. The leaders of North Korea and the U.S. should not miss out on an opportunity to meet along the inter-Korean border during South Korea's hosting of APEC next week. That is according to Unification Minister Jung Dong-young on Friday, who urgently met with reporters to convey his call for a Kim-Trump summit. Jung said both the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump have shown a willingness to meet, and that Seoul has cited movements across the border to tie up the inter-Korean border area, including indicating Pyongyang may be ready for a meeting. He added that Seoul backs a meeting of Kim and Trump and is preparing the means, such as telecommunications and vehicles, to support a summit if it takes place. Jung further warned that further momentum for a Kim-Trump meeting would be hard to come by, as a U.S. leader's visit to the Korean peninsula does not occur frequently. Also, the White House has confirmed U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping will sit down for their face-to-face meeting, also in Gyeongju next week, with the world closely watching if their meeting this time will do anything to soften their year-long trade war. Yoon-jin reports.
The White House confirmed on Thursday that U.S. President Donald Trump will be meeting Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea on October 30th. It is a part of Trump's wider Asia trip, which includes his first stop in Malaysia on Sunday for the ASEAN summit, followed by a meeting in Japan with the newly sworn-in Prime Minister on Tuesday. He'll then move on to South Korea on Wednesday for his meeting with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. Trump is also scheduled to deliver keynote remarks at the APEC CEO luncheon and participate in a working dinner with APEC leaders before flying back to the U.S. Thursday evening. But attention is being drawn to his confirmed meeting set for Thursday morning with Xi Jinping. It will be the first face-to-face meeting for both leaders since Trump's return to office. The meeting comes amid an escalation in trade tensions between the two countries. Trump said the first question he would ask Xi would be about fentanyl, as it is the chemical that's been a leading cause of U.S. overdose deaths, which Washington accuses Beijing of failing to curb its exports of. Beijing, in return, has accused Washington of using the chemical to blackmail China. Tensions have jumped recently, with China announcing restrictions on its rare earth mineral exports, to which Trump has threatened to impose an extra 100% tariff on Chinese goods from November. Attention is drawn to whether the world's two largest economies can hammer out some kind of sustainable trade deal, as it could send shockwaves through various industries around the world. Yoon-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's industry minister says talks with the U.S. over a $350 billion investment package remain deadlocked, with both sides still divided over how much of it should come into direct cash. Park Jun-han has the details.
After returning from talks in Washington with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Industry Minister Kim Jong-un told a National Assembly audit on Friday that South Korea and the U.S. were in intense confrontation over the amount of an upfront cash payment and the $350 billion investment package South Korea pledged for tariff reductions.
There are stark differences between the two sides over what constitutes an appropriate level. From our standpoint, we believe the upfront cash payment should be reduced from the current proposal, while the U.S. side maintains it should be larger. Both sides remain sharply divided on this issue.
Kim pointed to three key principles that must be ensured to finalize the deal. First, whether the agreement truly aligns with the mutual interests of both countries. Second, whether the investment project is commercially viable and a worthwhile endeavor. And lastly, that the deal should minimize its impact on financial and foreign exchange markets. Minister Kim further explained that the U.S. side has shown considerable understanding of the potential adverse effects the investment could have on South Korea's foreign exchange market if it is made entirely in cash. Regarding a security deal between the two countries, which could involve energy security and defense cost sharing, National Security Advisor Lee Sung-rak said on Friday that security agreements have reached certain understandings, but may not be announced during the APEC leaders' meeting. Lee said the U.S. wants to announce both a security agreement and a tariff deal at the same time, but either could come first, and the South Korean side doesn't mind which one is announced. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung says his government is carefully reviewing the potential impact of the trade talks with the U.S. on South Korea's financial markets. That's according to an interview with the Singaporean daily The Straits Times ahead of his one-on-one with U.S. President Donald Trump next week in Gyeongju on the sidelines of the APEC leaders' meeting. The president said he is exploring ways to maximize a mutual benefit while remaining cautious about working towards any artificial deadline. South Korea's Finance Minister Koo said Friday that action will be taken in response to any volatility in the foreign exchange market. Speaking at a related review meeting with key financial policymakers, Koo cited global uncertainties, including U.S.-China trade tensions, as one of the reasons for foreign exchange market instability. The Finance Ministry noted that domestic demand is rebounding due to the effects of the supplementary budget and improved consumer sentiment, with exports and the domestic stock market performing better than expected. However, concerns were raised about South Korea's overheating property market, with a swift action urged to address the demand for housing. South Korean chip giants Samsung Electronics and SK hynix set a new record in terms of combined market capitalization, driving the benchmark KOSPI to new highs. Our economics correspondent Moon Ji-young tells us more.
The combined market capitalization of Samsung Electronics and SK hynix has caught attention, surpassing 1,000 trillion Korean won based on their closing prices. According to the Korea Exchange, the two chip giants' total market capitalization reached 1,024.7 trillion Korean won, or $710 billion on the boards today. Samsung Electronics shares rose over 2% to close at 98,800 won, while rival SK hynix jumped more than 6% to 510,000 won. This strong performance marks an incredible surge of over 100% in just 10 months compared to their combined market cap at the end of last December.
Overall, there's a strong positive outlook for the semiconductor industry. The anticipation of a semiconductor supercycle, a topic consistently discussed by investment firms globally, continues to drive market sentiment. Additionally, rising prices for DRAM and NAND are boosting expectations for improved earnings, allowing Samsung Electronics and SK hynix to spearhead the market's upward trend.
He added that despite the global economic slowdown and a lack of clear improvement in corporate earnings, the market's rise was driven by expectations for future value. Meanwhile, the broader market also saw significant gains. The benchmark KOSPI surged to as high as 3,950 won during intraday trading, setting a new record high. It ultimately closed at 3,940 won, up 2.5% from the previous session, marking another record high for the closing price. This sharp rise in the benchmark KOSPI was notably influenced by easing trade tensions and optimism for the semiconductor industry. Investor sentiment was further lifted by news of a planned summit between the leaders of the United States and China. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has called achieving balanced regional growth a must for sustainable growth and the survival of the nation. Speaking at a town hall meeting in the southeastern city of Daegu on Friday, he noted that Korea may end up in a situation similar to Japan's 30-year economic slump if the regional divide remains unresolved and home prices continue to soar in capital areas. He suggested providing incentives to rural areas to help them secure more infrastructure and businesses. Korea's centuries-old craftsmanship is finding new life in the modern day. An exhibition at Deoksugung Palace highlights the artisans keeping those traditions alive for future generations. Our Park Hyo-bin was there.
Preserving tradition is just as important as creating it anew. A group of Korea's master artisans known as National Heritage Craftsmen have come together to showcase how traditional craftsmanship continues to thrive. Inside Deoksugung Palace, Korea's heritage is reborn through the hands of those devoted to keeping it alive. From a reinterpretation of the Irorobongdo, the iconic royal folding screen that stood behind the king's throne, to a faithful restoration of Gyeongbokgung Palace's floral walls, the exhibition features more than 120 works by artisans and apprentices across disciplines such as carpentry, painting, and sculpture. These craftspeople spent months, sometimes an entire year, replicating the exact materials or techniques of the past.
This portrait was made using Yungnimun, a technique from the late Joseon period. We use natural pigments based on original recipes. Recreating the traditional process requires multiple attempts and can take 6 months to a year.
Their dedication goes beyond restoring old methods. It's about reviving the spirit behind them.
As a builder of hanok, Korea's traditional wooden houses, I am proud to promote the excellence of Korean architecture worldwide. We're doing our best to raise the global profile of our country's heritage craftsmen.
Each brushstroke and carving embodies centuries of accumulated skill and pride. And through their hands, the legacy of Korea's ancestors finds new life.
Our forebears left us this national heritage. Now it's our turn to pass it on to the next generation. That's why we keep creating, so that tradition never fades.
The exhibition, which runs until this Sunday, reminds visitors that heritage is not merely a relic of the past, but a living dialogue between yesterday and today, carried forward by those who refuse to let it disappear. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
There are many reasons to wait for Fridays, but one of them is definitely the arts and culture coverage by our culture correspondent Park Kwon-woo. He is here in the studio with us. Happy Friday, Kwon-woo.
Great to be here, Dami.
So Kwon-woo, what do you have for us tonight?
So Dami, 10, 9, 8, 7. We just got 7 days left until the APEC leaders meeting held in Gyeongju. The city is already alive with so many different kinds of cultural events. And as APEC brings together all 21 member nations to discuss future-oriented values and exchange ideas, including in the cultural sphere, one special event stands out. And that's a collaborative art exhibition between two historical rich cities, Gyeongju and Taiwan's ancient capital, Tainan. And they're showcasing special artworks, raising expectations for more cultural exchanges down the road. But before I give too much away, let's first take a look at what's going on in Gyeongju. Just days before the APEC leaders meeting kicks off in Gyeongju, a city known for its 1,000-year-old heritage, the spirit of cultural exchange is already in full swing. For the first time, artists from Gyeongju and Taiwan's ancient capital, Tainan, have come together for a joint art exhibition, following an exchange agreement signed last year. A total of 40 works created by 20 artists from each city are on display, celebrating friendship and a shared vision for a successful APEC event. A representative piece titled 풍정말리, an idiom meaning a long and glorious journey ahead, embodies that significance. While Gyeongju artists are presenting works across diverse genres, including pottery and paintings, all 20 pieces from Taiwan feature calligraphy, as it's one of East Asia's most emblematic art forms.
Calligraphy is like a common language, as the two countries have been exchanging for a long time. And this exhibition carries special meaning, as much of Taiwan's culture and history started from Tainan.
Other Taiwanese artists also expressed their desire for more collaborative projects.
Through calligraphy, we've been able to learn from one another and grow together. I hope programs like this will continue and that Korean artists will also have the opportunity to visit Taiwan for future exchanges.
Those thoughts were also shared by the Korean artists.
Artists need to actively communicate and share their artistic spirit and vision. We need more opportunities for artists to meet in person and engage in deeper dialogue. We're gradually working on plans to broaden our exchanges with more places in the future.
Following Thursday's opening ceremony, the exhibition will run through November 1st for visitors from around the world. And as these artists dream of deeper ties, Gyeongju's journey of cultural exchange is just beginning, setting the stage for meaningful interactions during the upcoming APEC event. Totally a 풍정말리.
Well, Konu, I hear more collaborative projects are coming up in Gyeongju. What are they?
That's right. So currently 22 cities across 12 countries, including Japan, China, and Italy, have signed exchange agreements with Gyeongju, and 8 of them are from China. A city official noted that Gyeongju's ties with China date back to the Silla dynasty, adding that the exchanges hold special significance as China will host next year's APEC event. She added that there's more to come.
Nothing's been officially set for next year yet, but we've been steadily holding photo and art exchange exhibitions with our sister cities, and that'll probably continue. We're also collaborating with sports. Gyeongju Se Marathon team will take part in a race in China this November.
Konu, what a wonderful collaboration. Now, what are some other cultural events taking place near the APEC event?
Yeah, so there are plenty of things going on right now. And one thing I highly recommend for our viewers is definitely seeing Gyeongju's nightscape. It's totally beautiful. And there are stunning media art shows that are lighting up the city's cultural heritage sites, including the ancient tombs. The program actually kicked off today, running through November 16th. And I'll be covering more of this during my visit to Gyeongju next week, so stay tuned. And there will also be a hanbok fashion show and music festivals featuring musicians, including popular K-pop artists such as G-Dragon, Rise, and IVE. And other than that, there are plenty of exhibitions and events running throughout the APEC period. So if you're planning to visit Gyeongju this time of year, don't miss out.
Well, I'm sure you'll keep us posted during the APEC meeting next week. I'll see you down in Gyeongju next Friday.
All right, thank you.
Unlike clear autumn weather across the rest of the country, rain has persisted in areas on the East Coast. With the heavy rain advisories in place in Yeongdeok in Gyeongsangbuk-do province, rain will continue until tomorrow. About 20 to 60 millimeters of rain is expected in the northern coastal parts of Gyeongsangbuk-do province, 10 to 50 millimeters in the center and southern coastal areas of Gangwon-do province. Seoul reached 20 degrees Celsius during the day today, which is about 2 degrees higher than the average temperature at this time of year. There will be clear autumn weather throughout this weekend. Tomorrow morning will start off at above 10 degrees all over the country. Daily highs will go up to 18 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 22 degrees in Jeju. We'll see a more intense cold early next week with the morning temperature in Seoul plunging to 2 degrees Celsius on Tuesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
Korea, a globally recognized sports powerhouse. Behind the dazzling achievements, there's always an invisible force at work. With sophisticated materials, cutting-edge equipment, and innovative technological solutions, SMEs in the K-sports industry play a vital role in bolstering Korea's status as a sports powerhouse. By integrating AI technology, they unlock athletes' potential and enhance performance, elevating the sports environment to the next level and opening new markets in the sports industry. Their innovative technology and bold challenges drive the growth of Korea's sports industry, creating a better world through sports. The innovation of these SMEs never stops. A systematic partnership support program is implemented to discover promising sports SMEs, provide technical validation and R&D support to enhance competitiveness, and strengthen the foundation for overseas expansion. At Tokyo Sportech 2025, the technological prowess of Korean companies was recognized. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and the Korea Sports Promotion Foundation supported K-sports companies with product promotion and business consultations with global buyers, demonstrating product quality and market potential, and confirming the possibility of expanding into the global market.
저희는 ICT 강국으로서 그 바이어나 사용자들한테 신기술을 접목한 생활 스포츠 기회를 실질적으로 확대할 수 있는 그 기회를 제공하는 데 많은 도움이 될 수 있으리라고 확신을 합니다.
이제 스포츠도 K죠. K 스포츠는 이겁니다.
The joy for all, created by the power of K-sports. Experience the future of the new sports industry through the innovation and technology of the Korean sports industry.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyun. Today marks United Nations Day, a moment to reflect on the UN's role in a world facing complex, overlapping crises. Just days ago, Asia-Pacific finance ministers met in Incheon for an APEC ministerial summit, where the UN Development Program pushed for stronger global action on inequality, climate change, and sustainable development. South Korea, once a recipient of the UN aid, now stands as one of UNDP's key partners, contributing funding, innovation, and leadership. So on this UN Day, we take a closer look at how the UNDP is reshaping its mission on the global stage and how its partnership with Korea is helping drive a real impact. For this, we are joined in the studio by Hal-young Shi, UNDP Associate Administrator and United Nations Under-Secretary General. A big welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So let's start right away with the APEC, of course. So you've attended the APEC finance ministers meeting a few days ago. Could you tell us what was the key message that UNDP actually brought to the table, and what kind of outcomes do you hope to see from that?
No, I think this APEC finance ministers meeting took place at a time when the world is facing major challenges. The political divisions and the climate pressures, and also uncertainties in the economy because of trade and related issues. And also the meetings taking place at a time when the world economic growth is not at the level that we needed to see in order to achieve the kind of growth and job and the prosperity that countries are looking for. So the meeting, I think, was important in addressing some of the key issues, right? How to use science, technology, and digital innovations, for example, to drive growth, right? How do you look at artificial intelligence, right, to bring more, productivity increase or growth opportunities to create jobs for the economies? Or how do governments look at the issues of financial efficiency and sustainability to make resource use more effective to achieve development results? So this was the focus of this APEC finance ministers meeting. What the UNDP brings to the table, I think, is really the focus on financing for development. How do we make use of all financial resources that are available in the world and apply them to achieve development goals? That applies not only to public resources, but also private resources. So how we can work across sectors, across governments, across countries, across economies, right? So that we really work together to achieve the kind of growth and jobs, prosperity that we want to see.
Right. Very essential and timely goals, considering the current global situation, of course, too. Now, building on that, so platforms like the APEC really bring together economic leaders, but the UNDP's presence signals something actually broader than that. What kind of role do you see for the UNDP in multilateral forums like APEC?
Yep. UNDP has been the secretariat of the G20 finance ministers, a working group on sustainable finance. Now, from last year, under Pelu's chairmanship, UNDP also was asked to support the APEC, finance minister discussion on development finance. And the fact is that, the developing countries today has about $4 trillion of financing gap every year to achieve their development goals. But at the same time, the world has more than $460 trillion of wealth. So the money, in a way, is there to finance this, development gap. But we need to work together to find a way, right, to align this, wealth to, the investment requirements to achieve, economic growth and, development goals. I think this is what, we try to do. We work with governments across the board to look at all sorts of financing, from tax revenues, right, and how to use them effectively, to, to make traditional ODA, official development assistance, more effectively, to leverage, right, to have innovative financing, not just the grants, but using that to leverage private resources. How do we work with the private sector so that their investment not only generates a financial return, but actually supports national development objectives? So these are some of the broad issues the UNDP is trying to advocate with finance ministers.
Right, a very important mission. Now, you've also met with Koreans, top government officials and partners as well, we hear. Could you tell us what were the key themes of conversations that came up?
I think with the officials of the Korean government, senior officials of the government, our discussion focused on how we can, continue to forge the multilateralism, the multilateral cooperation at a time when multilateralism is under challenge. Across the board, we see a decline of official development assistance, right? And in fact, from 2024 peak to this year and to next year, we can expect a cumulatively 20 to 30% reduction of global ODA flows. So we discussed how Korea, which has been bucking the trend, of ODA decline, right, can work together to support multilateral, platforms like United Nations Development Program to support the developing countries to deal with the multiple challenges, from conflicts to climate change, to jobs, to inequality. So I think this was the focus of the discussion. Mm-hmm. How can we work together to use multilateralism to help dealing with some of the most pressing challenges we face in the world?
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Shi, we're speaking of South Korea's role. South Korea is often cited as a model partner for the UNDP. From your own perspective, what sets Korea actually apart from other donors?
I think Korea used to be a recipient of development assistance from international community, including from the United Nations. In the really latest 60s, 70s, 80s, right? And UNDP supported hundreds of projects to support Korea's development. But when Korea joined the OECD in 1992, and it became a member of the official, assistance committee, development of assistance committee in 2009, I believe, right? So Korea become a donor from a recipient, right? So Korea, I think, had this experience of development cooperation, benefited from this cooperation. And Korea has always wanted to also then contribute, right, to international collaboration, because they know from experience, the positive impact multilateral development cooperation can have on a country's development. So I think that this is the basis, for our collaboration, from early 2000s, early 2010s, right? So I think this relationship has become into multiple dimensions, from the Korea's support to our core resource base, from Korea's support to our project-based, specific interventions in different countries, to also exchange of personnel from Korean government or young Koreans working in UN to establish themselves, to develop a career in the UN. So this has become really multidimensional collaboration, very strategic.
Right. It's really powerful how a country could go from a recipient to a donor, and that could set a good example, of course. Now, speaking more of the financial contributions to the UNDP, South Korea's contributions has been growing significantly over the past years. How is this increased support helping UNDP work on the ground?
First, the kind of core contributions that Korea government is making to UNDP allows us to be strategic, right? Because the core resources are not earmarked for specific programs, so we can use this strategically to help developing countries to work on development strategies. Right? No country developed because of aid, so countries have to, have the right development strategy, but also supported by the right financing, right, from all sorts of funding, and then backed up by high quality governance, right, that is effective, accountable, and inclusive. So Korea funding allows us to do that. But the Korean resource core contribution also allows us to respond to crisis immediately, disasters, right, immediately. That is indispensable, right? And then plus, specific programs in particular countries like Afghanistan, Myanmar, DRC, or now Palestine, right? So these support are simply critical.
Very important partnership too. Now, zooming on the two core challenges, climate change and inequality. Why do you think Korea's partnership is important in these specific areas, and what kind of joint efforts are currently underway?
I think one important feature of our collaboration with Korea is to use the experience of Korea in its development path to help other developing countries. And that kind of experience based on Korea's own experience is very convincing and very valuable. We have a scheme called SDG partnerships, right? And based in our Seoul Policy Center. And with this platform, we're helping many developing countries every year and to benefit from Korea's own experience. Now, Korea's experience is credible because it is a reflection of a progress, a process, right? It's not everything's perfect, but you have tried, you dealt with challenges, and you succeeded, and you are now sharing this experience. And that is, what makes Korea a successful, you said, mid-sized economy, which is a very important part of the G20, right? And also, of course, APEC economies. So I think Korean experience is really important, in terms of both poverty reduction, and also, your continuing effort to deal with some of the social challenges, right? Like inequality that is prevalent in every country in the world, right? So I think so with Korean experience, it's not that you teach somebody, right, with something, but you actually sharing your experience. Then countries then will say, okay, yes, this is useful. I can apply this here, or I can adapt experience, not just lift and shift, right, apply. So I think that is really valuable.
Right, a very important message you're saying. So it's not just learn about this, but we had this and show them the process, and then they absorb these.
It's a really good example. For example, the anti-corruption effort of Korea was really a great example. Because it was not only until only 2-3 years ago did the Korean parliament pass the law, against corruption. It was a process of decades that led to this important moment, right? And that example really shows to the country that development is a process, right? You have a clear goal, you want to achieve it, but then the whole society needs to work together to achieve that goal. Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
Thank you for highlighting that too. Now, Mr. Shi, we also want to talk about the UNDP's Human Development Report. Korea is, of course, a very strong supporter of that. How do you see the importance of that report in today's world, and how do you assess South Korea's role backing this?
The Human Development Report is a really important initiative because the concept of that is to look at development success beyond the measure of income, right? Because when you can have certain level of income, but you still, cannot have a quality life because you lack access to many other basic services, right? So Human Development Report focuses on the quality of development that is beyond the income, right? Look at the health, education. But now the concept has expanded to look at, for example, gender equality, to look at the impact of human activities on planet, right? Because without a healthy planet, development cannot be sustainable. So Human Development Report allows us to explore concepts that are innovative, right? That are new, that are thought-provoking, right? For example, if a country can be measured as very successful based on the traditional Human Development Index. But a year ago, we introduced an adjusted index adjusted against your footprint, right, of your material use, right, for your economy. With this adjustment, the planetary adjusted Human Development Index immediately changed the order of countries' ranking. That countries that are very successful suddenly dropped by 10 or 20 ranks because their footprint on material use consumption, right, for the world's resources are very big. So although their human development level is high, but adjusted by their impact on planet, their rank goes down. So that introduced different way of looking at success. And Korea has been steadfast support of our Human Development Report Office, providing support in terms of not only funding, but also like the use of technology to access, analyze data, right? Human resource exchange, and so forth. So I think we hope that the Korea support will continue.
Right, let's definitely do so. Yeah. Now, since today, like we've said in our beginning, it's United Nations Day. Mr. Shi, let me ask you, so as both the UNDP Associate Administrator and the UN Undersecretary General, how do you believe the direction of the UN's identity and purpose should evolve in today's global landscape?
The UN, during September high-level week of the General Assembly this year, the UN organized high-level meetings to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the UN. President, of Korea, President Lee, gave a very inspiring speech, right, emphasizing the importance of multilateralism and the kind of, experience that Korea had, to have benefited from UN support, but also its willingness to be a responsible party in the international community to contribute, right? So that statement was well noticed. And yes, there are challenges in the world, and there are a lot of criticisms of the UN, right? That is not working most effectively. What I would say is that for all the three pillars of the UN is working. In peace and security, we have the highest number of conflicts today. It's not ideal. But the UN is at this time deploying 11 peacekeeping missions in the world. It also has more than 20 political missions around the world to use Secretary General's good office function to reduce tension, to negotiate peace, to keep peace, right, in the world. So we have this tens of thousands of peacekeepers deployed around the world. In human rights, UN has come up with significant international conventions to safeguard the interests of people. For example, rights of women, right? Rights of children, rights of people with disabilities. Now, all this kind of international framework came about because of UN's work. In development, which is really what brings peace, right? Guarantees peace, and actually a concrete way to materialize people's human rights through health, access to health, education, security. UN is working in this area every day, right? So I strongly believe that UN has an important role to play, at this important juncture, but for many years to come. We need to make sure that multilateralism is strong, because bilateral cooperating is not sufficient. Many challenges are across the board, do not recognize borders, such as climate change. So we really need to work together.
Definitely. So it's really clear that the UN is evolving and also its approach to solving global problems as well. But I'm afraid we'll have to conclude our discussion here tonight. Mr. Shi, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much. Hope it was useful.
Thank you. And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
That all the meals here serve as a foundation of its practices.